welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Karina Joy, and if you are not, thank you for returning. I am going to share with you today first of all, my TBR for August. Those are going to be books that I most definitely will be reading, and then I have a big pile of possibilities because I have really been into mood reading and I really just wanted to have like some options. So when you look at these books, don't worry, I'm probably not going to read them all, but here it is. Okay, so the first book on my definite TBR is Midsommar Mayhem. Now, I have been doing Battle of the Books this month. I just now finished A Midsummer Night's Dream, and this is the other book in Battle of the Books for this go around. So I am excited about this one. Just a quick synopsis. I've talked about it a couple of other times. I'll post a video up here so you can see. But this little girl is a baker, and she ends up meeting a little boy in the forest, and I believe he's going to be the Puck character, and there's going to be mayhem, so can't wait for that. Okay, so the other definite read is going to be The Last Sin Eater. This is a book that I am doing a read along for. I will post my video here that has all of the information for it. But this is a book by Francine Rivers, and it's interesting and it's good and it's a reread for me. So I believe I already gave a synopsis in the last video, so if you're interested, go check that one out. Okay, so every month I join in with Chantel for the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. Actually, June and July I skipped, but I'm getting back into it this month, and the book that I am planning on reading is Heart of a Samurai. Okay, so this one is Heart of a Samurai, and it is by Margie Prius. So the story is about a 14-year-old boy who is on a shipwreck. He is on a Japanese ship, and an American ship comes by and saves the crew. So they learn English, and eventually the ship's captain adopts the 14-year-old boy as his son. And so that sounds really interesting. I want to read it. Okay, so I have a few, I have one buddy read and one book that I'm reading with my husband. These I don't necessarily plan on getting done by the end of August, but I figured I would just put them in here so you can see what I'm reading. You know, we are all interested in what everybody else is reading. So I've already mentioned this once before, and we are still working on it. It is The Anatomy of a Murder by Robert Traver. My husband and I are reading this. It is my husband's favorite movie, and so far we are loving it. It's adding more depth to the story that the movie is, and I can't wait to see more about these characters. So we are enjoying this one. So we will be continuing on this one until we get it done. Really, honestly, I don't care how long it takes. We're just gonna read it. Okay, so the next one I am kind of buddy reading with my sister-in-law, although she just told me that she hasn't been reading this and that she's been reading a different book. So yeah, if you're watching, you know you need to read this book, Stephanie. But anyway, we're reading Through the Ice, and this is by Piers Anthony and Robert Cronwise. Now, I'm not very far in, so I pick on her, but I really haven't been focused on it either. I just finished chapter 3, and it ended on a really big cliffhanger, so I am excited about it. This is about a young man named Seth, and in the beginning of the story, he kind of makes some guys mad because he spilt a beer. And they're called punkers. This is in the 80s. and they're essentially a gang. And so they come after him and his friend and just basically waylay them, and it's ridiculous. So now Seth is somebody that already knows how to fight, and he does martial arts, so he wants to be peaceful about it, but these people just aren't being peaceful. So things go down, and he ends up falling into some ice, and what we don't know if he drowned or not, but he ends up waking up in essentially like a fantasy world. So far there's a satyr, or he likes to call himself a faun. So if you don't know what either one of those are, it's the character where it's half man, half goat, in Greek mythology, I believe. And then there's wood nymphs and giant snakes and some really, really cool stuff, and I'm really excited about it. So I will probably get done with this one pretty soon, because right at the moment it's a page turner. Okay, I forgot to mention, I do have one more challenge that I try to read for every month, although I have not been the greatest at it, and that is my alphabet challenge. So this month I will be reading Romanov by Nadine Brandes. I've heard such amazing things about this book. I'm actually going to be listening to it, and so far I've listened to, I think, half of the first chapter, and it is about the Romanov family and the time that they spent. I don't know if this is I think it's essentially their prison stay. I don't know much about the history, but right now they're exiled from their home, and there's magic. So it's basically what would have happened if the Romanov family had magic. Okay, so lately I don't know, I have been mood reading, but if I'm not careful, I'll get stuck on one genre and just kind of stay there for a little while. And I really want to give myself some options. So I made a list of all of the genres that I typically read from, and then I just picked a book to put into those genres. This is basically the nerd coming out in me. I like to make lists, I like to make plans. Most of the time I don't stick to them, so this is a very loose pile of possibilities. I could very well like ditch this whole list and do something else, but I thought it would be fun to share with you what I am hoping to read soon. So I really do like to read a good biography, so I wanted to go ahead and finish this book. I've been working on this for a long time. It's very thick, and honestly, I will probably continue to work on it for a really long time. Let's see, where am I at? Okay, so I'm on page 165, and it is a almost 500 page book, but this is called From Jerusalem to Iran Jaya, not sure how it's said, by Ruth A. Tucker. This book follows missionaries from Paul all the way down until I believe it's like the 1970s, all the way into the 1970s. What I find interesting about this book is it's short biographies about different missionaries in different parts of the world and all the things that they go through. So I'm excited to continue reading this. I'm going to try to put more effort into finishing it, because it really has been on my shelf for a very long time, and I want to get it done. Okay, so the next genre that I like to read from is Christian living. If you don't know what that is, it is books that help you grow as a Christian. They're not necessarily devotionals. That's a whole separate thing, but they just give you encouragement, teach you about how to live for Christ. And this is the one that I've been reading. Again, these books will probably be slower for me because I like to draw as much stuff out of them as I can. But this is The Christian in Complete Armor, and it is by William Gurnall. This was written in the 1600s, in 1655, and he was a Puritan. but oh my goodness, this book has so much depth in it and so much good advice that's simple for us to understand. So I think every Christian should read this. Yeah. This is a collection of his sermons over a period of time that he preached on the armor of God. And so it is filled with scripture. So I've been going through and writing quotes from this in my Bible because I feel like they are so dynamic and I wanted a reminder of them. So when I read my Bible, I hope to see little tidbits of this in there. Yeah, so that's that one. Okay, so I've not had the greatest of luck in this genre lately, and I don't know. I feel like I want to read books that are accessible and easy, and some of these books just aren't. The genre is classics, and I'm struggling, but I really do like sci-fi, so I thought I would try 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. So that is the one I would like to get to next. Honestly, I'm not incredibly excited about it because I've had such bad luck with classics. I say that, but I really did enjoy A Midsummer Night's Dream that I just finished. So maybe this one will be a little bit better, but we shall see. Okay, so I really do like to read realistic fiction, and usually when I find the books that I'm interested that are in that genre, they're usually middle grade. So the one that I have for that is called Blooming at the Texas Sunrise Motel, and this is by Kimberly Willis Holt. I've read the first chapter. Actually, I think I've read the first couple of chapters, but it's already so heart-wrenching. I really don't want to say anything about it other than that it's about a little girl dealing with loss, and yeah. So this one, that's the one I'm going to be reading, and I will probably finish it really quickly because it is a page turner. I've already started it. Can't wait to finish it. Okay, so another genre that I have been dipping my toe into this month is cozy mysteries. So I used to think I wouldn't like them, but then thinking about some of the TV shows that I watch, they're very cozy mystery-esque, and so I feel like I might really enjoy them if I gave them a chance. So the one that I'm reading right now, I'm listening to it on audiobook, and it is For Whom the Book Tolls by Laura Gale Black. This one is about a woman who is having a really hard time. So her uncle says, come stay with me and I will help you out. So she gets to her uncle's place, and her uncle says, look, I have to get some sleep tonight, so just come in, go to bed, I'll see you in the morning. So she comes in, doesn't wake her uncle up, goes to bed, and in the morning she discovers that in his bookstore he has fallen down the stairs and he is dead. So the question is, did he get murdered, or did he kill himself accidentally, or what's going on? But it's a cozy mystery, so you know he got murdered. But it's a bookstore and a murder mystery, and who doesn't like that? So I'm ready to finish it. I think I'm about halfway through, maybe 30% through, but I need to see what happens. Okay, so the next genre that I want to have a book to choose from is fantasy. I am loving fantasy this year. It's not been a genre that I've read from, but I really do enjoy it. So this is the one that I have on the list. It's called A Karina and the League of Crows. This is by Melody Edwards, and this is about two twins that have the gift of talking to crows. So these girls can talk to crows. In the first chapter, they have a crow that has followed them everywhere in their life. They are orphans and they are in foster care. And so because this crow follows them everywhere and they're indigenous peoples, unfortunately, foster parents have found it kind of weird that they have a crow and that they talk to the crow. And so they've been kind of pushed around to different homes because of that. So in the first chapter, the crow ends up getting a message from another crow, and a crow comes in beaten up really badly, lands on the ground, and tells him his message. And the messenger ends up dying, and their crow friend has to leave. And then right after that, a murder of crows starts following them, and yeah, so I'm interested. I want to see how this continues. This is a self-published book. I bought this in Wyoming. When I saw this cover, I was like, I have to pick that up, and I'm just interested to see what it's all about. Okay, here is another genre that I've had a hard time with lately, and I think it's because I read far too many World War II stories in a row, and so I'm trying to like read within the genre but not necessarily World War II, and that is historical fiction. So the one that I am reading right now is News of the World by Paulette Giles. This is a book that is actually about Wichita Falls, which is where I used to live, and so I had to read it just for that point. But it is about an old man who used to be in the military, and he takes newspapers and he reads them to the public for money. So this is his living, and he knows a lot of people because of this. And so a man comes to him with a little girl who had been kidnapped by the Kiowa Native American tribe, and they killed her family, kidnapped her, and then the government told them, look, if you want to keep getting all the stuff that we give you, you have to give up your prisoners. And so they dropped her off somewhere, and this man was hired to take her back to her family, but he doesn't feel like he can. And so he wants the guy that takes the news around to take the little girl back to her family in San Antonio. And it's all about them learning how to communicate when they speak two different languages, and I'm sure it's going to be amazing. I haven't gotten very far in it, but I'm working on it. Okay, so a few weeks ago I did try a chapter, and I will link it up here for you. And I tried the first chapter of Prairie. And so for magical realism, I want to read this book. I've already read the first chapter and I was very, very intrigued, but this is by Susanna Clark. I'm sure you've heard of this story, but if you haven't, this basically follows a man who's in this mysterious house that it's essentially like never ending. It has tons of levels and it goes on for miles, and only one other person lives in the house, and it's filled with these statues that are just amazingly done. And so I'm interested to find out what this house is and why Prairie is in the house. So I'm gonna have to read this one as soon as I possibly can. Okay, so I have really been enjoying reading manga this year. It's completely new to me, but I'm loving it. So I am currently needing to read volume 3 of Ascendance of a Bookworm. So that's on my list to go next. If you don't know anything about Ascendance of a Bookworm, it is about a woman who is in love with books, and she ends up actually getting killed by her books, and she prays that God would let her be reincarnated into a world where she can have all the books she wants. And she ends up getting reincarnated into a 5-year-old's body where there are very few books in the world, and you basically have to be a emperor to read books. So the whole series is about her bringing literacy and all of that to the world, but it talks about so much stuff that people in the past had to deal with. Like, part of it talks about gathering things for the winter and weaving baskets and how to make paper and all of those things. So it has more than just the literacy aspect, and I have just really loved it. It's super cute. I'm gonna pick this one up soon, hopefully. So another genre that I like to read from is memoirs. Okay, so a memoir that I have started and I am hoping to get through in the next month or so, hopefully by the end of August, but who knows. This is Half Broke Horses by Jeanette Walls, or I'm thinking it's Walls. I've heard people say it differently, but it says Walls, so that's what I'm going with. This is about her grandmother and living on a farm in Texas as a young woman, and then moving to New Mexico and all of the things that go with that. So far, I am loving it. One thing I love the most about it, and this is probably silly, but I love that the little segments in the book are only like that, 2 or 3 pages. And so it's been one that I can pick up and just read a few things quickly, but I feel like I'm making progress, and so I tend to read more in books like this. So I'm hoping to finish that one soon. Okay, so the next genre is just mystery. Think Sherlock Holmes, which is actually the book I'm reading. I am working on a study in Scarlet, and I've actually been reading this for a few months. I am having a really hard time with classics. But I really do want to finish this. It's short, so it's only 120 pages long. So theoretically, I should be able to get that done really quick. It's just not going there, and it's not that I'm not interested. I think the problem is we've been on break from school, and I just don't get as much reading done when I'm on break because I get distracted a lot by the kids. So hopefully once school starts back up and my kids have more things to entertain them and not as much time to bug mom, maybe I can quickly read this in a day. I mean, honestly, 120 pages, if I just sat down and read it, I could get it done. So that's my book for mystery. The next genre that I'd like to get to is mythology. I really do find it interesting that a lot of stories that other countries and nationalities and tribes have relate to the Bible. And so I really want to read more of it because I want to learn what other nationalities and things, religions, I want to learn where they put God, because we all have this need for God. And yeah, so I really want to read mythology. The first one I have that I'd like to read is Navajo Folktales, and this one is actually their creation story and the flood. And so I am super intrigued by that. Yeah, so I'm hoping to get to this soon. I forgot to say who this is by. This is by Frank Johnson Newcomb. So hopefully I can get to some mythology soon. Okay, so another genre that I find important but is not one that I plan on finishing quickly is poetry. So I actually have a pretty hefty book for this, and it is The Best Loved Poems of American People. I bought this in high school, and so I decided I needed to read it. But like I said, I don't anticipate getting done with this anytime soon. It'll probably take me a really long time, but it is on my stand, ready to read when I want to, when I feel like reading poetry. Okay, so I have been in this super big sci-fi mood. So the book that I'm working on right now is called The Search for Wanla. This is a middle grade sci-fi by Tony D. Terlizzi, This is so far a really good book. It's about a little girl who is in this underground shelter, and she is being raised by a robot, and through certain circumstances, I won't tell you what, she ends up going to the world above, and it is not at all what she was taught about or what the robot thinks it should be. And they find out that they are not on Earth like they thought. They are actually on another planet with all kinds of strange creatures, a bad guy who's chasing them, and a friend who is helping them. So I am loving it. I'm about halfway through. I will probably finish it this week or next week because I really want to read it. Okay, so the next genre is short story collections. I absolutely love short stories. I had such big goals and I wanted to read more this year, but I really haven't read as much as I'd like. But I decided I would just take it one collection at a time and see how that goes. And so the one that I am working on right now is The End and Other Beginnings. And this is by Veronica Roth. It is, I believe it's 6 sci-fi short stories, and I am just really, really enjoying them. There's not a lot more to say other than that because each chapter is a different story. There's no reason to describe it, but I am loving it. Okay, so the next genre is a thriller, and this one I am going to read the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and it is Good Girl, Bad Blood. And this is by Holly Jackson. I think I've talked about this recently. Oh, it was on my growing TBR video, so I will post that up here. But this is the sequel to that. So I'm not going to give a synopsis because I already have several times of the first one, and so if you are interested in a synopsis, watch that video. Okay, so in all of this craziness that I'm sure is confusing, I also would like to read a middle grade and a young adult, and these are just so that I can add more of those to my list of things that I've read. And the reason why is because I plan on trying to find books that my kids can read when they're older. So I'd like to start now reading through some books so that when they're older I can say, oh, that one has stuff in it that I don't agree with, or I can say, yeah, that one's great. All of those things. So I want to add more of those to my reading shelf, and so I have them on the list. If I am in the mood to pick them up, I will. And so the first one is a middle grade, and I am going to put Keeper of the Lost Cities on that list. This is by Shannon Messenger. I'm sure you've heard all about it, but if you haven't, it is about a little girl named Sophie, and she is very, very smart, genius level, and she feels very left out of society. Part of the reason is because she can read people's thoughts, and she's never told anybody this, but it really does bother her because it can get very noisy and she hates knowing what other people think. One day she meets another kid that can read her thoughts, and she ends up finding out that she is actually an elf, and there's all kinds of adventures after that. I have read, I think, the first chapter a while ago, and so I really want to keep reading more. I've heard nothing but good things. I don't think I've ever heard a bad review on this, so I want to read it. Okay, so the next one is young adult, and I am going to be reading Little Blog on the Prairie. Okay, so this is by Kathleen Davitt Bell. I probably said that wrong. It sounds wrong. This is about a young girl who is having a hard time with her mom's choice of vacations. It happens to be that her mother loved Little House on the Prairie, and she finds a place in Wyoming that basically sends you back to the 1800s and how they lived on the prairie. And so she's not happy about this. So far, I've read a couple of chapters and it seems really fun. It's definitely a teenager book, but like I said, I want to read some of these just to see, basically to have like a list of books that my kids can read when they're older. That's really all it's for. So it's not necessarily for my pleasure, but it is for me to read and just see what books I feel like my kids could read later. So the very last thing I'm going to talk about is a list of books I have in Scribd, and they are short audiobooks. I basically picked a ton of books and put them on a list that are like 4 or 5 hours. And so if I listen to them at double speed, I can get done with them in a day. And so I always have one of these going. And the next one that I am going to read is Just Like Heaven by Mark Levy. Now, I watched the movie for this a while ago, and it is still to this day one of my favorite movies. It has Reese Witherspoon in it, and it is about a woman who gets in, I think it's a car accident, and she ends up being in a coma, and like a really long-term coma, to the point where her family feels like they need to rent out her apartment to help pay bills and things. So this man moves into her apartment and he starts seeing a ghost, and it is her. And so it's a romantic comedy as far as movie goes. I'm pretty sure that's how it's going to be in the book, but I thought it would be fun to read the book and see what the difference is. So there's that. So just an explanation for this pile of possibilities. I tend to read a little slower, and I like to read from a bunch of different books at a time. I kind of view it as like you would watching TV. It's my entertainment, and if I'm not in the mood for one book, I read another book. And so I have this large list of books because I'm reading them all at once. I know that sounds really crazy, but that's how I read. So some of them I might get done with in August, and some of them might carry over to another month, and that's okay. I don't want you guys to look at this list and think, wow, she reads a ton, I can never read that much, because really I will probably only finish maybe 7 or 8 of these books, and the rest of them, if I didn't DNF them, will move on to the next month. So I just wanted to make that clear. This is not a goal that I have that I'm going to read all of this large amount of books. This is just my pile of possibilities for the month. Alright, so that is the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're having a great summer. Please like and subscribe and comment below if you've read any of these books or if you're interested in reading any of them. I would love to hear your thoughts, and I will see you in the next video.